Before the resellers, before the collabs, before TikTok turned every teen into a stylist overnight, we had the real drip, the kind that came with the big logos, bigger jeans, and even bigger attitude. We're talking back when your whole outfit could get you clowned at school or crowned king of the lunchroom. And in the early 90s, the streets had their own designers. This wasn't just fashion, this was a moment stitched into denim and fleece. It came from the barbershops, the block parties, the music videos, the ciphers, and the corners. It was loud, it was proud, and it was made for us, by us, sometimes literally. So today, we're throwing it all the way back to salute the brands that raised us, the pioneers of early 90s urban streetwear. If you grew up in this era, hit that like button like it's a new Jack Swing beat. And drop your favorite brand in the comments, whether you rocked it, boosted it, or just wanted it bad. And make sure to subscribe because we got more nostalgia, more culture, and more stories than your uncle got polos in the closet. So strap in, we're diving into the threads that define the generation. Now let's roll. Before skinny jeans, before luxury streetwear collabs, and definitely before TikTok fashion hacks, there was Cross Colors, the brand that turned the whole fashion game into a billboard for empowerment. If you came up in the early 90s and you ain't seen somebody in a Cross Colors hoodie with Educate to Elevate stamped across the chest, you either wasn't outside or you ain't have a TV.
One of the things that TJ and I wanted to do in the 90s, when no one was talking about gang violence, the political climate then, and clothing without prejudice, we wanted to say these things because no one was saying them. We thought.
Born in 1989 but hitting heavy by 1990, Cross Colors came straight out of Los Angeles. Cooked up by Carl Jones, a graphic designer turned visionary, and co-founded with TJ Walker, who brought the flavor of the fashion design side. These weren't just clothes, these were statements. Jones came from a background soaked in political awareness and street hustle. So when he saw a void in fashion for young, urban black kids who didn't want to wear suits to express themselves, he filled that with a wardrobe that screamed black pride, unity, and social consciousness. And when we say bold, we mean bold. We're talking reds, yellows, greens, and blacks that look like they got handpicked straight out of a Pan-African flag. Baggy denim overalls with patches that read "Stop the Violence, Use Your Brain," and "Black by Popular Demand." Cross Colors really got its mainstream shine when it hit the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You saw Will rocking that oversized Cross Colors crew neck, and all of a sudden, it wasn't just streetwear, it was Black Hollywood certified.
I mean, from rhythm and blues artists to hip hop to Shaquille, Will Smith, and we were in ultimately hundreds of videos. I could go on and on about the artists who supported us.
TLC, and even Dr. Dre and Tupac got in on it. And once the camera started catching these legends draped in his unmistakable color blocks and slogans, Cross Colors became the fabric of the culture, literally. But Cross Colors wasn't just style, it was substance as well. They were one of the first brands to explicitly center black youth in their messaging without watering it down for white mainstream palatability. This wasn't no side hustle clothing brand. It was a full-blown movement backed by fashion, music, and a mission. Now let's keep the time machine rolling. Cross Colors lit the match with its bold colors and conscious messages, turning clothes into conversation starters. But as the early 90s rolled on, a new wave of designers started shifting the vibe, from Afrocentric awareness to pure swagger. And nobody embodied that shift better than the next man up. Before streetwear had influences and collabs with fashion houses in Paris, Karl Kani had already laid the foundation, raw, real, and built from the block up. Born Carl Williams in Brooklyn, the man behind the name literally turned a question into a movement. Can I? As in, can I make it in fashion without a silver spoon or big backers?
You know, can I just comes from the question, can I? And I'm answering the question, yes I can.
Once he legally changed his name to Karl Kani, the brand became personal, and the hustle got real. The brand officially launched in 1989, but it really found its stride in the early 90s. Right as hip-hop was taking over, not just music, but the entire style game. Instead of chasing mainstream approval, Karl Kani focused on designing for the culture. Oversized denim, wide-leg jeans with thick waistbands to fit that sag. and bold logos and color palettes that made a statement even when you said nothing.
It was the Tommy Hilfiger look. It really is the Karl Kani look.
Nah, we were established in 1989. Let's get it right.
Yeah,
The pioneer. They all copied this man.
That's right.
Well, I'm telling you.
The Karl Kani logo was the face of the brand. It wasn't just tucked in a tag or small of the chest, it was front and center. That alone made you feel like the clothes had a personal stamp of approval from the man himself. Now let's talk about cosigns. This is where Karl Kani separated himself from the pack. In 1993, Tupac Shakur, already a rising force in rap and culture, took part in a now iconic Karl Kani ad campaign. And that one ad gave Karl Kani cultural credibility in a way that no press release ever could. And Pac didn't do it for a check. He did it for free, out of the respect of his people, out of love for what Karl Kani stood for. That's the kind of realness that you can't fake.
And my clothes reflects the lifestyle of the kid on the streets, is where I'm from. So, if you think street, you think Karl Kani because of the fact that that's where I'm from and that's how we started and that's the way how we're gonna.
Other legends soon followed. Biggie, Nas, Dr. Dre, Aaliyah, Snoop, Jay-Z all rocked Karl Kani at some point. And it was less about brand loyalty and more about cultural alignment.
Pretty satisfaction is to see people wearing my clothes and supporting it and being able to relate to me because I only could design to what I know, designing from the streets of Brooklyn. So I just like to see the people wearing it and, giving props because I'm opening up the doors for other black designers too.
I should say,
By the 2010s, that nostalgic wave brought Kani back into the spotlight. Vintage collectors and hip-hop heads started digging through crates for original pieces. Celebs like the Migos, Chris Brown, NLE Chopper, G Herbo, and even Lil Yachty, and many more began rocking throwbacks and limited releases. And Kani launched new collections that blended his 90s DNA with modern cuts. The reintroduction of the brand gave that classic drip to a new generation who never lived through the Pac and Biggie era, but still wanted a piece of that energy. While Karl Kani was giving hip-hop its first real taste of street couture with the signature stitched right across the chest, another Brooklyn visionary was quietly sewing her name into the culture, literally. And y'all already know what's behind every great man, right? Well, in this case, she wasn't behind anyone. She was in front of her own lane, full throttle. Before streetwear was a marketing buzzword and before rappers had clothing deals flying at them like mixtapes, April Walker was already doing what most brands would try to emulate a decade later. And she wasn't just in the room, she was running it. Born and raised in Brooklyn, Walker was a fashion-forward creative with hustle in her DNA. Inspired by her father, a jazz musician and tailor, she had an eye for style, but more importantly, she had the streets behind her.
Big show at that time. It was called the Namsby Show, but I did that show and what happened was I invited Simon's, Dr. J's, Merry-Go-Round, just a lot of, like 10 buyers, and they all came and bought. And that's how Walker Wear started.
In 1990, Walker launched Walker Wear out of a Brooklyn storefront. And let's not sugarcoat it. She did it in an era where black women and men's wear were non-existent in the game.
I started when it wasn't sexy to be an entrepreneur. So people used to look at me like I was crazy when I told them this is what I was gonna do.
But she had the vision to make fly, oversized gear that spoke directly to the culture. Think baggy denim suits, bold graphics, heavyweight fabrics, and functional fits made to complement the hip-hop silhouette. Chains, Timbs, fades, and all.
And it came from seeing that my lifestyle wasn't being serviced with fashion, with the things that we wanted. We couldn't represent ourselves. The music was popping, but we couldn't get apparel or things that spoke to what we were living at that time. So I offered those choices.
What made Walker Wear special wasn't just the clothes. It was who was wearing them and when.
But you had a storefront in the 80s as a woman. And we ain't on no weird stuff. This is the 80s. And you spoke about how you ain't even want your face a part of it because you were a woman.
Her pieces weren't on the shelves waiting for approval. They already were on the backs of rappers like Tupac, Biggie, Aaliyah, Run DMC, LL Cool J, Wu-Tang Clan, and Queen Latifah.
Just a lot of other stories like that, from Run DMC to Queen Latifah to Naughty by Nature, and, LL. But it was all through word of mouth at that time. and we were all climbing that ladder.
And not in some PR package kind of way. They came to her. Rappers were literally pulling up to her shop in Brooklyn or hitting her for custom fits before music video shoots.
Shinehead, Shaggy, Audio 2, Biggie, he was Biggie Smalls then. They all started coming in my shop and saying, I need you to make that. I need you to make me a balloon. I'm doing an album cover.
A lot of her early work didn't even have a mass retail push. It lived in videos, in Source magazine spreads, and on stage. Her work helped shape the visual identity of East Coast rap in the early 90s. And let's keep it real, April Walker doesn't get mentioned enough. She was one of the first black women to successfully break into streetwear, and she did it by going straight to the consumer. No middleman, no industry approval needed. Her influence was foundational, but like a lot of innovators, she got overshadowed when bigger brands with deeper pockets flooded the market. Walker Wear didn't ride the wave. They were the ripple effect that created it. April Walker saw a lane nobody was driving in and swerved into it full speed, making space for other urban designers that came after. No gimmicks, just grit, skill, and Brooklyn roots stitched into every scene. While April Walker was holding it down for the culture with the tailor-made threads straight out of Brooklyn, another shift was happening, this time from the stage to the storefront. Rappers weren't just modeling fashion anymore, they were becoming designers, owners, brands in their own right, and few took that leap earlier or with more raw Jersey energy than the trio from East Orange who turned platinum plaques into street-certified apparel. Next up, Naughty Gear. Let's take it back to 1993 right quick. The Timberland boom is in full effect and Naughty by Nature is tearing up the charts with OPP, Hip Hop Hooray, and Everything's Gonna Be Alright. These weren't just radio hits, they were anthems from the trenches. And the group wasn't just about lyrics, they had style, energy, and a raw image that connected with the streets. So it only made sense that they bring that same energy to the fashion game, right? Naughty Gear was the brainchild of Tretch, Ben Rock, and DJ KG. Launched at the peak of their fame in the early to mid 90s, while most rap groups were wearing streetwear, Naughty by Nature decided to own it. And unlike the glossier brands popping up around the same time, Naughty Gear had that grit. And this wasn't high fashion trying to mimic the hood. This was the hood designing its own armor. The gear was rugged. Built for cold Jersey winters and long cypher sessions on stoops. Windbreakers, hoodies, and beanies made up the heart of the line, all stamped with the Naughty Gear logo, usually featuring the iconic bat or the scrawled graffiti-style font that matched their album aesthetic. You saw Tretch rocking it in music videos, on stage, and in interviews. The brand was never about slapping a logo on something generic, it was about reinforcing a movement. Naughty Gear was for the folks who didn't have rich parents, didn't grow up in the burbs, and didn't want to wear the same stuff that the mall was pushing.
When it came time for us to, put up a business, we wanted to start it here back in the hood. And hopefully it can encourage, other people around the way to put their businesses here.
And to keep it even more real, this wasn't a billion-dollar empire play. Naughty Gear didn't hit the department store shelves nationwide. It was grassroots, often sold through small urban boutiques, concerts, and local shops. If you had Naughty Gear in the 90s, it was because you knew where to find it, and that exclusivity made it even harder, man. Naughty Gear rode hip-hop's golden age and dressed it. Raw, real, and straight from the source, it was for the culture, by the culture, before that even became a marketing slogan, on the real. Naughty Gear represented that raw, ground-level era where artists weren't waiting on fashion to recognize them. They were building their own lanes from scratch, but as hip-hop's influence exploded, something wild started happening. Brands that never had the culture in mind started getting claimed by it. And none got flipped harder or faster than a certain red, white, and navy blue label that went from yacht clubs to project hallways overnight. Yup, it's time for Tommy Hilfiger. In the early 90s, Tommy Hilfiger wasn't on the average inner-city radar. He was a white designer from Elmira, New York, who launched his namesake brand in 1985, mostly aimed at the classic Americana lane, Polos, rugby shirts, chinos, and button-ups. Real Ivy League aesthetic. Think yacht club in the summer. It was clean, it was tailored, and it had as much edge as an episode of Full House. But the streets had other plans. By the early 90s, hip-hop artists started flipping the script on what preppy fashion meant. And Tommy's red, white, and navy blue color blocking, that became fashion gold in the hood. Not because of how it was marketed, but because of how it wasn't. The clothes stood out, they popped on camera, and had oversized fits before oversized was the thing.
People have never seen sporty-looking apparel with really giant logos. And that was like advertising for us because kids on the streets would wear the logos, and it was like advertising, but it made the brand very, very cool.
And most importantly, they weren't made with the black youth in mind, but black youth flipped it, styled it, and made it theirs. Tommy's real entry into urban fashion history came around 1994 and 1995 when artists like Grand Poobah, Brand Nubian started name-dropping Hilfiger in lyrics.
We just say a guy used to get clothing and I purchased something and I liked it. Like it was a sweatshirt. It was a yellow sweatshirt, had blue trimming around it.
Then came Snoop, who made it nuclear. In 1994, Snoop appeared on Saturday Night Live wearing a giant Tommy Hilfiger rugby shirt. And the next day, that shirt sold out nationwide. Hilfiger didn't even know what hit him. It wasn't a paid promo, it wasn't a brand collab. Snoop just liked the shirt, and boom, Tommy was in the culture. That single moment flipped the switch. Suddenly, everybody from Aaliyah to Destiny's Child to Raekwon and Usher were rocking Tommy. Not just as a flex, but as a style statement. The logo itself, bold, simple, and clean, became one of the most recognizable in streetwear, even though it wasn't meant to be streetwear. And Tommy, he was smart enough not to fight it. Rather than pull back or panic, Hilfiger leaned in. He started actively courting hip-hop artists, working with stylists and sponsoring events that put the brand front and center in the urban scene. He even launched a spin-off called Tommy Jeans, which had a younger, looser, more athletic vibe to match the demographic shift. And guess what? It worked, big time.
I got Tommy Jeans, what else? He's not my dad, but I got Tommy Jeans.
By the mid to late 90s, Tommy Hilfiger was everywhere. Music videos, award shows, magazine covers, your cousin's graduation photo. The brand sat at the weird intersection of Fifth Avenue and Fulton Street, and nobody else was doing it like that at the time. Of course, with the rise came controversy, and around 1996, 1997, rumors started swirling that Hilfiger had made racist comments about not wanting black people wearing his clothes. It spread like wildfire, especially in the barbershops and dorm rooms, but it was completely false.
So that is what I call the category of a BFL, a big fat lie. That's a big fat lie. That never happened.
I love being here today because I love the fact that I have the chance now to squash this, to dispel it, and to tell the truth.
Hilfiger denied it, and the rumor was eventually debunked. But the damage lingered for a bit. Still, the streets had already stamped them, and the influence of that early wave never fully left. Tommy Hilfiger didn't design for the culture, but the culture took it, repackaged it, and made it iconic. The brand became a walking contradiction, clean cut in theory, rebellious in practice. And for a few unforgettable years, Tommy was the bridge between Park Avenue and the park bench. Tommy might have leaned into the culture and caught lightning in a bottle, but the next brand, man, it got taken by force. Polo wasn't handed to the hood, it was claimed, piece by piece, sweater by sweater, like fashion reparations in real time. While Tommy was working with the wave, Ralph Lauren was out here getting hijacked by it, courtesy of a Brooklyn crew that turned preppy into power moves. So for the next one, it's low-life season. Before his name became stitched into the fabric of American fashion, Ralph Lauren was just a kid named Ralph Lifshitz from the Bronx, born in 1939 to working-class immigrant parents. He didn't go to fashion school, he didn't grow up rich, he just had vision and hustle.
As a kid, I wore a lot of my older brothers' hand-me-downs. I thought I liked wearing their clothes.
You liked wearing hand-me-downs?
I did. Well, I never had a lot.
In the late 60s, while working at Brooks Brothers, he started designing wide, flashy neckties against the grain of what was trending.
I said, can I make these ties? And he said, Ralph, no one's gonna wear them. The world is not ready for Ralph Lauren.
Those ties hit big. That led to the launch of Polo by Ralph Lauren in 1967, with the iconic Polo player logo debuting in 1971. His whole brand was built on aspirational Americana.
What people don't realize is Polo is not just a brand, it's a lifestyle.
The lifestyle of the American dream.
Prep schools, polo matches, yachts. It was high-end, clean-cut, and not remotely aimed at the streets. But then came the plot twist. Here's where the lowlifes enter the story. Formed in 1988 but cemented in the early 90s, the lowlifes were a movement out of Brooklyn that flipped the Polo brand into a badge of honor.
We was coming up, it was about a lot of people broke, they needed money, so we started taking money. We started breaking in stores, we started breaking jewelry store windows, we started snatching money bags. Then it was a competition. Then I started going to name brand clothes.
Crews like Ralphie's Kids and Polo USA started hitting department stores and boosting Ralph Lauren pieces. Not for resale, but for the look, for the status. If you had low, you were somebody. From Polo Bear sweaters to Ski 92 beach jackets, these weren't just fits, they were uniforms. Dudes were rocking full polo down to the socks, button-ups, jackets, scarves, drawers, and duffel bags. And they made it work with Timberlands, gold fronts, and attitude. They didn't wear it how Ralph intended, they made it mean something completely different. And when Raekwon showed up in that yellow and black Snow Beach pullover in Wu-Tang's 1994 Can It All Be So Simple video, it was curtains. That look became legendary, and it wasn't something that Ralph sent him. That was the low-life move, 100%. From Brooklyn to Staten Island to the Bronx, Polo had become the official uniform of East Coast flyness. Did Ralph co-sign it? Not at first. The brand kept a distance for a while, but you couldn't ignore the fact that Polo was moving heavy in the streets because of hip-hop, not in spite of it. As the years rolled on, Ralph Lauren Polo stayed iconic, but the low-life era gave it a layer of cultural depth that the boardroom could have never planned for. The movement lives on through Thurston Howell III and the worldwide low-life chapters that keep the legacy alive today, not just as a fashion statement, but as a culture that reclaimed and remixed luxury on its own terms.
'86 and on, the Polo started hitting heavy, you know?
And it stuck.
And it stuck. It became, as far as hip-hop, the only brand that never went out of style.
So yeah, Ralph might have built the house, but the lowlifes threw the party, kicked down the doors, and redecorated in primary colors. That's Polo in the 90s, a brand that started in the Bronx, made it to Beverly Hills, and came right back to the block with a whole new meaning. And there it is, people, the brands that made us walk taller, sag harder, and pose a little extra in every disposable camera pic. These weren't just labels, these were flags worn with pride and purpose. Before influencers had link trees, we had Karl Kani tags and low-life dreams. Before aesthetic was a word, we had color-blocked rugby shirts and hoodies with enough weight to double as body armor. This was style, with the soundtrack, and the streets were the runway. Hit the comments and tell us which brand you wore like a badge of honor. Subscribe for more culture-packed trips through time, sneakers, fits, legends, and stories the algorithm forgot. And like the video if your wardrobe in the 90s had at least one thing your parents still don't understand. Stay fresh, stay fly, and we'll catch you on the next one. And we Swayze.